Last season left us with a brutal twist. Jerla Morel handed Haniwa over to the Trevantians, and Baba, blinded with rage, literally blinded him in return before storming off toward the mighty kingdom of Trevantis. Out on patrol, a Trevantian unit thought they heard something. The next heartbeat, Baba and Kofun came crashing down on them like predators, leaving no survivors in their wake. But in that blood-soaked chaos, Kofun realized he wasn't built for war. Still, he refused to back off, determined to follow his father into the lion's den. Baba pulled him aside and warned him with ice in his voice. "Stay with Paris. If I don't return with Haniwa in a week, we're gone. Assume I'm dead." But Kofun, proud of the sight that set him apart, wouldn't let go. So Baba tested him, showing in one swift move how fast the Trevantians could cut him down, how useless those precious eyes would be when the blade hit his throat. The message landed, and Kofun finally understood. Baba stole a soldier's identity and pushed forward alone. Meanwhile, Haniwa wasn't rotting in a government prison. She was locked away in the hidden lair of General Commander Edo Voss. When she demanded answers, Edo silenced her with a name that rattled the walls. His own. But the real shock came when a guard named Ren revealed the truth. Edo Voss was Baba's younger brother, who had been hunting him for 25 winters. The reason? Edo claimed Baba murdered their own father before vanishing into exile. Haniwa's heart refused that story. How could her father kill his own blood? But Ren saw through the play. Edo was using Haniwa as bait, a lure to pull Baba into his city. And once Baba stepped inside, there would be no way out, because in Trevantis, Edo is the law. In that same breath, Haniwa realized something else. Ren had the gift of sight too. And as the trap tightened, Baba slipped through the gates of the very city he once called home, disguised as the enemy, reconnecting with an old friend to whisper the impossible truth. He wasn't here to stay. He was here for war. Yakis knew one thing for sure. If Edo had taken Baba's daughter, there was no way she'd be rotting in some public jail. She'd be locked inside Base 3, the fortress where Edo's elite commandos lived and breathed. A place so secure, even the air felt caged. Edo wasn't the same man Baba once knew. He was now Commander General, ruthless and untouchable. But Baba trusted Yakis, because if anyone knew a hidden way in, it was him. What they didn't notice was the smithy lurking in the shadows, hanging on every word. Meanwhile, Haniwa wasn't the kind of girl you keep in chains for long. She snapped free, lunged at Ren, and the room exploded into a raw, savage fight. The kind where you can hear knuckles cracking and breath tearing out of lungs. Haniwa pinned her, blade ready, but stopped short. She couldn't kill her, because deep down, she recognized the same scars. Growing up with vision in a world that hated it, hiding every glance, every flicker of truth, that unspoken pain pulled them closer, and before long, enemies became something like friends. But out in the wild, the Witchfinders were closing in, their black banners cutting through the landscape like a storm front. Kofun tried to slip past them, but he was no ghost. They caught him, demanded answers about Haniwa, and dropped a bombshell. Queen Magra herself had sent them, and she was alive, waiting for him in Pensa. The word mother hit Kofun like a blade to the gut. He couldn't believe it, couldn't trust it. Yet he was dragged off, while Paris stayed behind, her heart heavy, to wait for Baba. And far away, the queen returned to Pensa, the crown settling heavier on her head than ever. Lord Harlan welcomed her with every ounce of respect his city could muster. But his brother burned with resentment, because in one swift move, the queen had claimed their city as her new capital. To him, it felt like theft, a betrayal wrapped in silk. But Harlan cut through the tension with a line sharp as steel. She's the queen. If we rebel, even if her army's small, her people know how to fight. That warning echoed through Pence's halls, but Lord Harlan's mind was elsewhere. Because the queen standing before him was the same Magra he'd carried a torch for since childhood. And now, she was closer than ever. Still, one question burned inside him. How did Kanzua fall? Magra lied, claiming she knew nothing, that she wasn't even there when it happened. By dawn, the city buzzed with whispers. And then the queen dropped a bomb. Trevantis was behind Kanzua's destruction. Harlan's face went pale. Everyone knew going to war with Trevantis was basically signing your own death warrant. But Magra's sister, Queen Sibeth, didn't flinch. She called for open war, vengeance, blood for blood. Then she stunned the court again. She was pregnant, and she swore God himself had shown her a vision. Her child would be born with sight, destined to change the fate of Paya, destined to rule the world. To cement her prophecy, she issued a decree that shattered centuries of belief. No longer would the sighted be hunted as witches. From now on, they could live openly among the people. The crowd froze. This wasn't reform. This was sacrilege. For generations, they'd been taught the sighted were monsters, and now, overnight, they were to be neighbors. But Sibeth's motives weren't divine. They were personal. This law was cover, a way to protect her sister's children while she plotted her own miracle. Because the real question hung in the air like smoke. How was she supposed to guarantee her child would be sighted? If the prophecy failed, her crown would crumble, and Magra's kids would be the first to bleed. Sibeth already had the answer. Boots. She'd seduced him, played him, used his gift like a genetic blueprint, hoping their child would inherit his cursed vision. If that gamble paid off, she'd be untouchable. Meanwhile, miles away, Yakis led Baba to the edge of a coal mine, whispering that a worker named Snell could sneak him through. All Baba had to do was pay the man, and the tunnel would take him straight into the belly of Edo's fortress. Baba handed over the silver and followed Snell down, the heat rising with every step, walls glowing red as if he were walking straight into hell itself. The air burned his lungs, molten embers cracked under his boots, and he kept pushing forward, faster, faster, until the sinking dread hit him. This wasn't a way in. It was a trap. He turned back, heart pounding, and burst out of the tunnel, straight into the hands of men who had been waiting for him all along. Baba Voss had 100-coin bounty on his head, and betrayal was already brewing in the shadows. Smithy, a lowly worker in Yaki's factory, had overheard everything, sold him out, and tricked him into the wrong tunnel long before Snell could guide him. They thought the fire and coal would break him, that he'd crawl out weakened, begging for air. But when Baba emerged, he was pure fury, a storm in flesh, tearing through the men waiting outside. Smithy's courage shattered watching his comrades fall, and before Baba could snap his neck, Edo's soldiers arrived, blades flashing in the dark. Baba fought like a man possessed, slicing, dodging, spilling blood until bodies piled at his feet, but the net kept tightening. Then, his fatal mistake. A child of Jerlamarel spotted him, whispered his location, and though Baba grabbed him, silenced him with a glare, the boy still betrayed him. Soldiers swarmed, chains clamped down, and Baba Voss, the unstoppable force, was dragged before Edo like a caged beast. Edo sneered. The great Baba Voss, brought down because he couldn't kill a child. He refused to free Haniwa, spitting venom from the past. You were my brother, my protector. Instead, you lashed me, bound me in chains. Now every night, I'll return that pain, and Haniwa will bleed with me. Baba broke, begging. I was forced. I had no choice. But he wouldn't say why, wouldn't confess the secret that ate him alive. Edo didn't care. Cruelty was the only language he spoke now. And then, something shifted. Ren, who had stood silent through it all, saw something in Haniwa she couldn't ignore. At dawn, she unlocked her chains, led her through the city gates, and for the first time, Haniwa saw the heart of Travantis. The guards stiffened, saluting, and the truth hit like lightning. Ren wasn't just a soldier. She was a lieutenant commander of Edo's own army, the right hand of the man who held her life in his fist. The city itself was breathtaking, but nothing compared to where Ren led Haniwa. From the outside, the tower looked like nothing more than a ruin, crumbling stone and broken arches, but inside, high above the streets, it opened into a hidden flat filled with objects Haniwa had never seen, relics of a forgotten world that felt almost magical. There, time seemed to slow. Their conversations stretched into hours. Laughter flickered, and Haniwa began to feel something shift. A pull in Ren's voice, in her touch, a connection that went far deeper than friendship. And while their bond was quietly burning, far away a Travantian spy returned from Paya carrying dangerous news. Queen Sibeth Kane had blamed them for Kanzua's destruction and declared war. The council was stunned. Why accuse them now? But Sibeth knew the truth. The Travantians couldn't retaliate even if they wanted to. They were already locked in a brutal conflict with the Ganites, a kingdom famed for its steel and iron, warriors forged harder than their weapons. That's why Sibeth dared to gamble. She could brand Travantis as monsters, and nobody in Paya would question it. Edo, however, wanted blood, pounding the table for war, but the council chained his hands with a firm no. Meanwhile, Baba was dragged back into his cell, his body shredded from a night of lashes, when a familiar voice echoed through the dark. Witchfinder Tamakti Jun, the man he believed had slaughtered the Alkeni and killed Magra. Baba lunged, ready to tear him apart, but Tamakti spoke the truth. Magra had survived, abandoned by Sibeth but taken under his care. Baba's rage cracked, confusion flooding in, because if Tamakti was lying, what was his angle? Still, the words gnawed at him, refusing to let go. And while his mind reeled, Edo had other plans. He ordered Haniwa brought out, not for freedom, but to break her father's soul. He wanted Baba to hear her cries one last time, to brand that sound into his memory, because soon, he swore, Baba would never hear her again. To Edo, Haniwa wasn't family. She wasn't even human. She was a breeding vessel, a tool to fill his armies with sighted children. And the day she failed to give him what he wanted, that would be the day she died. Baba sat powerless, fists clenched in chains, forced to listen as his daughter's future was stripped away, the echoes of her voice haunting him like the toll of a funeral bell. 25 winters ago, he had killed his own father, but the Trivantians had a reputation carved in blood. Whether 25 winters or 1,000, they never forgot revenge. Their legends weren't whispers, they were warnings. On Ito's command, Baba was paraded through the city like a captured beast, mocked, spat on, stripped of every shred of dignity. And in that moment, Haniwa felt the crushing weight of guilt. Her stubbornness had turned her father into a broken spectacle. Ren was ripped away from her arms, custody stolen, and Ito carried her off to his own home. Meanwhile, back in Pensa, Lord Harlan's true hand was finally revealed. He'd given up his city to the queen without hesitation, but not out of loyalty. He wanted Magra, wanted her as his wife. But the queen refused. So Harlan played his last card. With a single nod, he summoned a surviving guard from Kanzua, a man who carried a secret that could shatter everything. He revealed the truth. Kanzua had not been attacked at all. The council and the people had turned against the queen, and she had slaughtered them all. The terrifying part, she didn't even know how she had done it. Before the confession could spread, Harlan silenced the man permanently. He could have used the truth as a weapon against her, but instead, he buried it. That act of calculated loyalty impressed the queen enough to strike a deal. Magra would be his bride. And as if fate itself was tightening the noose, news of Kofun's survival arrived. The queen told Magra instantly, but then twisted the knife. For her children's safety, she had to marry Harlan. To prove the danger was real, she led Magra through the city streets that erupted in violence when rebels tried to ambush them. The queen had expected it. Half the city was already rising against her new witch laws. To Magra, the message was clear. This place was not safe for her children, not without the queen's allies. And now, with Harlan holding her darkest secret, his alliance was no longer optional. It was survival. All Magra had to do was stage the wedding, pretend it was real, and buy her children time. As for Baba and Haniwa, dead or alive, no word had reached them. Cornered by reality, Magra gave in. The wedding was set for 4 days later, the clock ticking louder with every passing hour. Ren waited for the perfect opening, then slipped like a shadow into the Trivantian prison. Steel flashed, guards dropped, and within moments she stood before Baba, breathless as she revealed the truth of what was coming. Just one cell away, Tamakti Jun was locked behind iron bars. He offered Baba a deal. He could lead him to Magra, because if Baba tried on his own, he'd be dead before sunrise, cut down by the witchfinders. Baba agreed to free him, but with one promise carved in stone. The day you stop being useful to me, I'll kill you myself. From there, they made straight for Ito's tower. On the march, Baba noticed something. Ren's steps, her rhythm, her certainty. She wasn't blind. She could see. Meanwhile, inside, Ito had already prepared Haniwa's fate, grooming her as nothing more than a vessel to breed sighted children for his future army. But luck was shifting. Ren, Baba, and Jun breached the tower, splitting off into different directions, cutting down soldiers as steel clashed in every corridor. Jun held the stairway alone, holding back wave after wave. Ren found Haniwa and cut down the predator who kept her caged. Haniwa was finally free, but Baba's search carried him straight into Ito's waiting fists. Ito beat him down mercilessly, and Baba didn't fight back. He didn't raise a hand. Bloodied and broken, he begged only one thing: free my daughter. But Ito refused, vowing that Haniwa would be nothing more than his breeding ground as long as she breathed. That's when Haniwa herself appeared, bow drawn, arrow loosed. Ito staggered back, wounded, as Baba rose with fire in his voice. If you ever come near my children again, I'll burn this city to the ground. And Ito, laughing through the blood, screamed, "That's the Baba Voss I remember." They escaped into the night, blades cutting a path through soldiers until the city walls were behind them, no one ever knowing who had orchestrated their rescue. But while one family fought to survive, the queen was spiraling into darkness. In her palace, she murdered her own servant for whispering the truth, that her child was gone, lost in miscarriage. And in her fury, she turned on Boots, blaming him for failing to give her the heir she had demanded. She promised him power, promised him a throne beside her, but when he couldn't deliver, she slit his life from him too. For the queen, it wasn't about grief, it was about fear. If her people learned the prophecy was broken, they'd see her not as divine, but as insane. And in her paranoia, she drowned her world in blood. Back where Baba had last left Kofun and Paris, the ground was empty, their tracks erased by the snow. until Tamakti Jun knelt and felt it, the imprint of horseshoes pressed deep into the ice. A message scratched onto a rock told the rest. Witchfinders had dragged them toward Pensa. Jun pieced it together fast. That's where the queen was heading, plotting to crown Pensa as her new capital. Haniwa had overheard it during her captivity. The queen had declared that those with sight would no longer be branded as witches, which meant one thing. Kofun and Paris had been taken alive, and it had happened under Princess Magra's command. Staying there was suicide, so the group moved quickly. While far away, Edo was already on the hunt. He tracked them to Jerlamarel's old stronghold, convinced that Kofun was the one who had freed Baba and Haniwa. In Edo's mind, if the sister was born with the bow, then the brother had to be born with the blade. When he demanded Kofun's location, he learned Baba had already whisked him away. Edo snapped. This would never have happened if Jerlamarel had handed Kofun over when he had the chance. In that heated exchange, Edo uncovered another truth. Jerlamarel had gone blind. To Edo, that made him useless. He executed him on the spot, right in front of his son Oloman, and seized the compound for himself. Every one of Jerlamarel's children became Edo's prisoners, and now their survival rested solely on Oloman's shoulders. Edo wasn't alone either. He brought with him Tormata, a brilliant and dangerous scientist, forcing Oloman to serve under him or watch his siblings die one by one. Meanwhile, Kofun had already reached Pensa, only to be hit with the shock. His mother's wedding was happening that very day. He rushed to her side, spilling everything he knew, though even he had no clue if Baba or Haniwa were alive. He begged her not to marry, but the tide had already swept too far. Magra stood at the altar with Lord Harlan, a marriage in name only, a mask for survival. Harlan, her childhood friend, swallowed his pride and went along, honoring her wishes without question. But in the shadows, the queen made her move, meeting Kofun face to face for the first time. And with a smile that was all venom, she began reeling him in, her obsession with sight and prophecy twisting her into something monstrous. For the queen, there were no lines left to cross, only bodies left to burn, dragging their broken bodies through the wilderness. Baba, Haniwa, and Tamakti. Jun stumbled straight into a slaver's camp. At first, Jun's words bought them safe passage, but the second the men realized a girl was with them, the mask came off and steel was drawn. Baba and Jun, starved for weeks, had nothing left in the tank, their swings heavy, their defenses slow. Just as the mob closed in, Paris stormed in with a squad of hidden warriors, blades flashing, cutting through the chaos like ghosts out of the snow. But even then, one truth hung heavy in the air. Wherever Tamakti Jun went, death followed. Every warrior wanted his head. His past sins had carved enemies across the world. And still, Baba kept shielding him, dragging his enemy-turned ally forward because only Jun could lead him back to Magra. But Baba's body was failing. The lashes he'd taken from Edo had rotted into fever. And without help, he wasn't going to last. So they sheltered with the warriors, a society nobody even knew existed. Passed down mother to daughter for generations, they were a secret order sworn to protect the sighted when the gift finally returned. And Paris had once been one of them. The revelation hit like thunder. For 2 centuries, they searched the world for a child with vision, finding nothing. Then one day, a boy was born with eyes that saw, and a mind sharper than anyone had imagined. Paris raised him, broke every rule of her order to feed his hunger for knowledge, even unlocking forbidden archives of books and relics only decipherable through codes. That boy devoured it all, every last page, until his craving for truth pulled him away forever. That boy became a man, and that man was Jerlamarel. Suddenly, the pieces clicked. Paris had always known. Magra hadn't stumbled into the Alkeni tribe by chance when she was pregnant. Jerlamarel had brought her to Paris, trusting her with the lives of his unborn children. And now Haniwa understood why Paris's loyalty had always tilted toward him, because once he had been her responsibility. But the past was just a shadow compared to what loomed ahead. The war drums were already pounding. Penza and Travantes were hurtling toward a collision, 2 kingdoms spiraling into blood. And when the dust rose, 2 brothers, Baba and Edo, would finally meet face to face, not as kin, but as enemies bound by fire, betrayal, and vengeance.